For years, Hawaii Five-0 showed us paradise, ocean waves, palm trees, and heroes who never gave up. But behind that tropical perfection, tragedy was quietly writing its own story. Many of the actors who brought these characters to life faced heartbreak, illness, and endings far darker than the sunsets they once stood under. What really happened to them? Let's find out. James MacArthur as Danny Dano Williams. Danny Dano Williams was the heart of Hawaii Five-0. Smart, loyal, and deeply human, he balanced McGarrett's icy control with compassion and warmth. Every time he appeared on screen, there was light, a reminder that even in a world of crime and danger, kindness still mattered. But before that gentle smile ever reached the screen, James MacArthur was already carrying heavy shadows. Adopted by Broadway legends Helen Hayes and Charles MacArthur, he grew up surrounded by fame he didn't earn and expectations he couldn't escape. He worked backstage, painted sets, and begged for small parts, desperate to prove he belonged. Rejection followed him everywhere, until The Light in the Forest and Swiss Family Robinson finally opened the door. Fame, however, came with its own cage. Disney wanted the perfect boy. James wanted to be real. When Hawaii Five-0 began, it felt like freedom. Until it didn't. Behind the camera, long hours and Jack Lord's relentless perfectionism left him drained. The smile fans adored began to fade, replaced by quiet exhaustion. By the late 70s, the magic was gone. Scripts felt empty, and the role that once defined him now weighed him down. He left the show before its final season, not in anger, but in silence. Later, he took smaller parts in Murder, She Wrote, The Love Boat, and Fantasy Island, but the spark never truly returned. Fame had given him everything, and quietly taken it all back. James MacArthur played Danny Dano Williams in Hawaii Five-0 beginning in 1968, when he was 31 years old. He passed away on October 28, 2010, in Jacksonville, Florida, at 72 from natural causes. His net worth was around $4 million. Jack Lord as Steve McGarrett. You know that commanding voice, that stare that could cut glass. That was Steve McGarrett. On screen, he looked untouchable, calm, precise, the kind of man who made criminals tremble and networks rich. But behind the suit and that famous Bookum Dano, Jack Lord's real story was nothing like the paradise he stood in. Before Hollywood ever called, he lived 100 different lives: sailor, painter, salesman, dreamer. He studied under Sanford Meisner while selling Cadillacs just to afford rent. Casting directors dismissed him for being too intense, too cold. That sharp focus you saw on screen? It came from years of people telling him he'd never make it. He almost quit after Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Too much rejection, too little kindness. Then Dr. No came along. His turn as Felix Leiter should have made him a household name, but Lord's perfectionism cost him future Bond films. He demanded more pay, more control, and lost everything instead. It became a pattern. Even in Stony Burke and God's Little Acre, he pushed too hard, wanting every detail flawless. Directors called him difficult. But that's the thing about artists who care too much. They often burn themselves from the inside out. When Hawaii Five-0 arrived, it finally fit. Lord poured every ounce of himself into McGarrett. But the pressure to keep it perfect turned the set into a storm. Co-stars walked off. Crew members cried. Jack kept going. He wanted every line crisp, every light angled just right, until his body began to give out. The same focus that built him also destroyed him. Jack Lord played Steve McGarrett in Hawaii Five-0 in 1968 when he was 48 years old. He passed away on January 21, 1998, in Honolulu, from congestive heart failure after quietly battling Alzheimer's. He was 77 years old, leaving behind an estate of around $12 million, which he donated entirely to Hawaiian charities. Kam Fong as Chin Ho Kelly. He wasn't the loudest man in Hawaii Five-0, but he was its soul. Chin-Ho Kelly, the quiet detective with sharp eyes and a calm heart, gave the show its local heartbeat. In a world of guns and tension, Chin was the steady voice of reason, the kind of man who made justice feel human again. Off-screen, Kam Fong Chun's life was carved out of loss and resilience. A World War II veteran and firefighter, he carried the discipline of survival into acting. But tragedy struck early. In 1944, a bomber crashed into his home, killing his wife and 2 young children. For years, he couldn't speak of it. When he finally turned to acting in his 40s, it was less about fame and more about healing. Fong joined Hawaii Five-0 at 50, finally finding recognition after decades of quiet struggle. Yet even success came with pain. By season 10, producers killed off Chin-Ho, claiming he was no longer dynamic enough. The decision devastated him. He'd given his heart to the show, and suddenly it was over. Financial stress returned, and he took small local theater roles just to keep going. In his later years, illness crept in. Lung cancer, born from years of smoking under stress, slowly consumed him. The man who once saved lives as a firefighter now fought for breath. Through it all, he never complained. His friends said he still smiled, still cracked jokes, even when bedridden. Kam Fong played Chin-Ho Kelly in Hawaii Five-0 beginning in 1968 when he was 50 years old. He passed away on October 18, 2002, in Honolulu at 84 from lung cancer. His estimated net worth was $2.5 million, earned mostly from the series, though much of it went to medical care. His legacy lives on through his son, Dennis Chun, who later joined the Five-0 reboot. Harry Endo as Che Fong. He never needed to raise his voice. Just one look at the evidence, and the truth unfolded. Che Fong was the mind everyone relied on when chaos took over. Calm, exact, almost surgical in his focus, he wasn't chasing criminals. He was quietly exposing them, piece by piece, with nothing but reason and patience. Harry Endo's path to acting was pure accident. A banker by trade, he was filming a commercial for his company when someone noticed his composed presence. That one moment changed his life. Yet Hollywood wasn't kind to men who looked like him. Being Japanese-American in the 1960s meant he faced walls no resume could break. Even after Five-0, roles came few and far between. Endo's war years had already hardened him. He had joined the U.S. Army in 1941, serving bravely in Europe as a radio operator. Yet when he returned, opportunities were limited. Acting came late, but it gave him purpose, a second identity after years of invisibility. Still, the prejudice of the industry never really lifted, and by 1980, tired and disillusioned, he retired quietly. In his later years, age brought pain. Arthritis left his hands stiff, and memory loss crept in. The man who once played a genius lost track of his own thoughts. Friends said he spent his final years in a care home, lonely but peaceful, often smiling at old Five-0 reruns without realizing he was in them. Harry Endo played Che Fong from 1969 to 1977 when he was 46 years old. He passed away on July 9, 2009 in Los Angeles at 86 from natural causes. His estimated net worth was $1.8 million, earned from his years in banking and his time on Hawaii Five-0. Gilbert Lani Kauhi as Kono Kalakaua. Kono Kalakaua was the muscle and laughter of Hawaii Five-0, a big man with an even bigger heart. Always ready to crack a joke or throw a punch, Kono gave the team its warmth, its humor, and its humanity. He wasn't just comic relief. He was the glue that made the tough guys feel human. In real life, Gilbert Lani Kauhi, or Zulu as everyone called him, was just as larger than life, but his story ran darker. A former Coast Guard officer, athlete, and surfer, he rose from Waikiki's clubs as a stand-up comic and singer. Leonard Freeman discovered him and cast him in 5-0, thinking he'd found a natural star. But fame came too fast. The drinking started early, the parties never stopped, and Hawaii's paradise slowly turned into isolation. By the fourth season, tension behind the scenes reached a breaking point. Zulu's drinking, debts, and outbursts got him fired. He tried to reinvent himself, even performing under Zulu after losing rights to his stage name. But nothing stuck. His fortune vanished in gambling and legal fights. Twice bankrupt, twice betrayed, he became another cautionary tale of Hollywood's cruel cycle. As years passed, his health collapsed. Diabetes blinded one eye. Liver disease stole his strength. The once towering Kono was confined to a bed, his booming laugh reduced to whispers. Friends said he never lost his warmth, even when pain was constant. He joked that he'd booked himself long before the doctors did. Zulu played Kono Kalakaua in Hawaii 5-0 from 1968 to 1972, when he was 31 years old. He passed away on May 3, 2004, in Honolulu, at 66, from complications of diabetes and liver failure. His net worth was around $500,000, much of it lost to addiction and medical bills. Richard Denning as the governor. He didn't need a badge or a gun. His power came from a single word. When the governor spoke, even McGarrett stopped to listen. Richard Denning's calm authority carried weight. He was the embodiment of order in a world that thrived on chaos. Denning's career, however, was far from calm. He began in the 1930s, scraping through background roles and forgotten B films. World War II interrupted everything. When he came home, Hollywood had moved on. He spent months living out of a trailer, chasing any role that would pay the bills. The glamorous smile on camera hid years of hunger and self-doubt. His luck turned when he landed My Favorite Husband on radio, opposite Lucille Ball. But when I Love Lucy was born, Lucille chose her real husband, Desi Arnaz, over him. The rejection stung. Denning never said it publicly, but friends said he carried that wound for decades. He pivoted to smaller crime and horror films, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Day the World Ended, and learned to survive on persistence alone. By the time Hawaii 5-0 arrived, he was semi-retired on Maui. Producer Leonard Freeman promised short hours and gentle workdays, coaxing him back. For Denning, the role of governor wasn't about fame anymore. It was about belonging again. Yet even in later years, the toll of long flights and stress on his aging heart caught up to him. Richard Denning joined Hawaii 5-0 in 1968 when he was 54 years old. He passed away on October 11, 1998, in Escondido, California, at 84 from a heart attack. His net worth was estimated at $3 million, built from classic films and early real estate investments. Herman Wedemeyer as Duke Luculla. You remember Duke, don't you? The calm, dependable officer who never raised his voice but somehow kept everyone in line. Herman Wedemeyer gave him that warmth, the steady hand of a man who'd seen enough of life to understand that strength didn't always need noise. Before the cameras, Herman Wedemeyer had already lived 2 lifetimes. He was Hawaii's golden boy, an all-American football hero known as the Flyin' Hawaiian. But glory came with scars. Head injuries from his playing days haunted him, blurring memory, shaking his confidence. When sports ended, the fame faded faster than he expected, and the silence that followed hit harder than any tackle he ever took. Acting came almost by accident, a return to discipline, something familiar. When 5-0 offered him Duke, it felt like redemption. Yet even success couldn't quiet the restlessness inside. After the show, he entered politics, hoping to serve the state he loved, but the campaign trails were cruel. One failed election after another chipped away at his spirit. He'd tasted adoration before. Now he faced indifference. In his final years, old injuries returned to punish him. Heart trouble worsened, surgeries failed, and the once vigorous athlete struggled to breathe. Friends said he faced it like a soldier. No complaints, just quiet endurance. Behind that famous smile, there was always a man who had given everything to Hawaii and kept nothing for himself. Herman Wedemeyer played Duke Lukela in Hawaii 5-0 from 1971 to 1980, beginning when he was 44 years old. He passed away on February 6, 1999, in Honolulu at 74 from heart failure. His estimated net worth was $1.2 million, built from sports, acting, and politics. Kiig Diig as Wo Fat. The moment Wo Fat appeared on screen, everything stopped. That stillness, that voice. He didn't need to shout. His presence alone carried danger. Ki Dieg turned silence into power, creating a villain so haunting that even McGarrett seemed human beside him. But Dieg's own life was as mysterious as the roles he played. Born of mixed Egyptian and Chinese heritage, he moved through early Hollywood with quiet caution. Casting directors didn't know what to make of him. Too foreign for leads, too commanding for background roles. He fought years of rejection before finding small triumphs on stage in Tea House of the August Moon and Flower Drum Song, where his deep, deliberate voice first caught notice. Even then, he carried the weight of suspicion. During the 1960s, his ambiguous background made him a target of Cold War paranoia. Some whispered he was a real spy, an absurd rumor, but one that haunted him. Still, he kept working, perfecting his measured, unsettling calm in The Man from UNCLE and Con. To him, acting was meditation. Every pause had meaning. Every silence had power. In private, Dieg sought peace in philosophy. He became a Taoist scholar, wrote books on spirituality, and founded a Taoist sanctuary in Arizona. Acting faded from his life, replaced by teaching, poetry, and the serenity he'd been denied in fame. But time was unkind. Age took his health. Isolation took his joy. The man who once embodied control spent his last days quietly fading, surrounded by few, remembered by many. Ki Dieg played Wo Fat in Hawaii 5-0 starting in 1968, when he was 58 years old. He passed away on November 25, 1991, in Mesa, Arizona, at 81, from natural causes. His estimated net worth was $800,000, earned from his villainous roles and philosophy work. Glenn Cannon as John Manicote. Glenn Cannon made law look human. As John Manicote, the firm but fair prosecutor of Hawaii 5-0, he spoke like a man who'd seen both sides of justice. You believed him, even when the words were scripted, because he carried the weight of truth in every pause. But behind that confident look was a man who'd spent decades clawing his way through the rough corners of show business. Cannon started on stage, hungry and idealistic, performing wherever there was light and an audience. From New York to tiny theaters barely holding an audience of 10. Television came late, and when it did, he took every role with gratitude. Alfred Hitchcock presents The Outer Limits, Combat. All before Hawaii ever called. By the time 5-0 came around, he was almost 40 and teaching to survive between gigs. Acting had become less about fame and more about purpose. He carried that discipline into every courtroom scene. But the irony? The man who played reason itself would later lose his own, not to pride, but to a cruel disease. In the early 2000s, Glenn was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It began slowly. Forgotten names, misplaced lines, until one day, even family became strangers. For 17 years, he drifted through fading memories, a man once praised for clarity now trapped in confusion. Colleagues described his final years as gentle but heartbreaking, like watching a candle burn long after its flame had gone. Glenn Cannon played Attorney General John Manicote from 1971 when he was 38 years old. He passed away on April 18, 2017, in Honolulu, at 87, after a long battle with Alzheimer's. His estimated net worth was $1 million, earned from stage work and teaching at the University of Hawaii. Al Harrington as Detective Ben Kokua. They called him the South Pacific Man. Al Harrington brought Detective Ben Kokua to life with the calm authority of someone who didn't need to prove himself. He wasn't loud, he wasn't showy, but when he spoke, everyone listened. He carried the spirit of the islands wherever he went, on screen and off. Harrington's path was never simple. Born in American Samoa, he grew up in poverty, raised by his grandmother before reuniting with his mother in Hawaii. He worked his way through school, played football, studied history, and even taught before finding his true voice in entertainment. Discrimination in college stopped him from majoring in drama, but it couldn't stop his love for performance. When Hawaii 5-0 came calling, Al was already performing in Waikiki shows, dancing, singing, telling stories of the Pacific. The producers saw something rare, strength with humility. That balance made him unforgettable as Ben Kokua, the detective who stood for both law and aloha. The fame that followed turned him into a symbol of pride for Hawaii and Samoa alike. In his later years, he became one of the island's most beloved entertainers, headlining shows at the Hilton Hawaiian Village and sharing stages with icons like Don Ho. His charm made everyone feel like family. Even when his acting slowed down, his presence never faded. But in 2021, after a sudden stroke, Hawaii lost one of its most genuine hearts. Al Harrington played Detective Ben Kokua from 1968 to 1972 when he was 33 years old. He passed away on July 21, 2021, at 85 after suffering a massive stroke. His estimated net worth was $2 million, earned from decades of performance and music. Danny Kamakona as Sergeant Nakamura. Danny Kamakona didn't need fame. Just one look at him in uniform, and you believed in the badge. As Sergeant Nakamura on Hawaii 5-0, he wasn't loud or flashy. He was the kind of man who kept the world together while everyone else took the credit. His road to that reliability was rough. Born in Hilo, Hawaii, Danny spent years balancing odd jobs before 5-0 gave him his first break in 1968. The long shooting hours were brutal, the pace unforgiving. But he never complained, not once. While others dreamed of Hollywood, Danny carried Hawaii in his heart, proud just to represent his people on screen. Through the 1970s and 80s, he worked non-stop. Guest roles on Sanford and Son, Barnaby Jones, Magnum, P.I., and Miami Vice. It seemed like he was finally catching up to the dream. Then, at 50, he landed The Karate Kid Part 2. His first major film. It should have been the start of something bigger. Instead, the pressure of constant travel and exhaustion began breaking him down. Doctors warned him to rest after heart surgery, but he wouldn't stop working. "I'll rest when I'm done," he once joked to a friend. That rest came too soon. In 1996, just days after filming a small TV role, he passed away alone in his apartment, only 60 years old. It was a quiet end for a man who had given everything to stay in the frame. Danny Kamakona played Sergeant Nakamura in 1968 when he was 33 years old. He passed away on February 6, 1996, in Honolulu, from complications following heart surgery at 60. His net worth was estimated at $700,000, much of it spent on medical bills and the relentless cost of chasing work. Alex O'Loughlin as Steve McGarrett. What kind of man steps into the shoes of a legend and makes them fit? Alex O'Loughlin did. His Steve McGarrett wasn't a copy of Jack Lord. He was raw, emotional, and unbreakable. From the first chase scene, it was clear. This wasn't nostalgia. It was a rebirth. Alex's journey to that moment was anything but easy. Born in Australia, he came from humble beginnings. His mother a nurse, his father a teacher. He trained at NIDA, one of the toughest acting schools in the world. But Hollywood didn't open its doors easily. Early shows like Moonlight and Three Rivers gave him hope, only to be canceled too soon. Each loss chipped away at him, but he refused to quit. When CBS cast him in Hawaii Five-0 in 2010, it felt like redemption. Alex threw himself into the role, literally. He did his own stunts, fought through pain, and carried the weight of the show for 10 seasons. But that commitment came at a cost. Spinal injuries, torn muscles, and nerve damage nearly ended his career. At one point, doctors told him to stop before he couldn't walk again. Still, he pushed forward. Not for fame, but for love of the craft. When the show ended in 2020, Alex didn't chase more spotlight. He stayed in Hawaii, where the waves were calm and life was simple. He shifted to family, fitness, and small film projects, the kind that remind you art can be quiet too. Alex O'Loughlin played Steve McGarrett in 2010, when he was 34 years old. In 2025, he's 49, healthy, and at peace, living with his wife and children in Hawaii. His estimated net worth is $25 million, built from acting and business ventures. Daniel Day Kim as Chin-Ho Kelly. Some actors play heroes. Daniel Day Kim became one, on and off the screen. His Chin-Ho Kelly wasn't just the moral center of Hawaii Five-0. He was the heart that kept the team grounded. Calm, measured, quietly brave. The kind of man who never needed to shout to be heard. Kim's path to that calm was forged through struggle. Born in Busan and raised in America, he grew up in two worlds that didn't always accept him. Hollywood, especially, wasn't kind to Asian faces in the 1990s. He took what roles he could: security guards, lab techs, background agents, and watched others get the lines he never would. But he didn't give up. He studied harder, worked longer, and turned every rejection into fuel. Lost changed everything. Playing Jin Soo Kwon forced him to rediscover his Korean roots, even relearning the language he hadn't spoken since childhood. The role earned him global respect and empathy from audiences who saw humanity where stereotypes once stood. But with Hawaii Five-0, he stepped into something bigger, a chance to redefine Asian representation on mainstream American TV. When a pay dispute exposed inequality in 2017, Daniel made the painful choice to walk away. It wasn't about money, it was about dignity. That decision turned him from an actor into a leader. Through his company, 3AD, he went on to produce The Good Doctor, opening doors for others who came after him. Behind the polished calm is a man who's fought every step for fairness, not only for himself, but for everyone who ever felt unseen. Daniel Day Kim first appeared as Chin-Ho Kelly in 2010, when he was 42 years old. In 2025, he's 57, still acting, producing, and advocating for inclusion in Hollywood. His estimated net worth is $10 million. Scott Caan as Danny Dano Williams. He never walked into a room quietly. Danny Williams stormed in, full of sarcasm, heart, and fire. Scott Caan turned what could have been a cliché cop into one of the most human characters on Hawaii Five-0. Beneath the humor and constant arguments with McGarrett was a man who carried loyalty like a badge. Scott's life before that badge was turbulent. Growing up as the son of Hollywood legend James Caan was both a blessing and a curse. He was surrounded by fame, but chased none of it. In his youth, he drifted through LA's underground hip-hop scene, performing as Mad Skills in the Wooligans. When that dream collapsed, he pivoted to acting. But it wasn't easy living under a last name that already belonged to a star. Every audition was a comparison, every role a test of whether he was James Caan's son or something more. He built himself from the ground up. From small, gritty roles in Varsity Blues and Boiler Room to the slick con man in Ocean's 11, Scott learned to find strength in subtlety. He wrote and directed Dallas 362, winning a Las Vegas Film Festival award. Proof that he didn't just inherit talent, he earned it. But behind the scenes, there were struggles, creative burnout, the weight of expectations, and the loss of both his parents in later years. He poured that pain into art, and it shows. Raw, imperfect, real. On Hawaii Five-0, he found his rhythm. Danny's wit mirrored Scott's own, sharp but warm. Their chemistry with Alex O'Loughlin made the show more than just action. It became a friendship story about two men trying to save a world that often didn't want saving. Even when the cameras stopped, Scott stayed creative, directing, photographing, and writing with the quiet discipline of someone who's finally comfortable in his own skin. Scott Caan played Detective Danny Williams in Hawaii Five-0 in 2010, when he was 34 years old. In 2025, he's 49, living in California, raising his son, and pursuing photography and film. His estimated net worth is $13 million. But what he values most is time, the kind he once never had enough of. Their stories may have ended, but their legacy still echoes through Hawaii's waves. Which actor's fate surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.